So I'm here now with Nichola Millard, that is a futurologist with BT, and has been speaking for an audience of direct marketeers here in Sweden. Tell me first, what's your job on a day-to-day basis?
Well, I am called a futurologist, so I always get asked, what on earth is that? And do I have a crystal ball? And actually my answer is I do have a crystal ball, but it doesn't work. And actually I'm not really a futurologist, to be honest. A lot of the stuff that I do is around future trends, and I'm a psychologist by background as well. So I look at the technology, and I obviously work for a technology company. BT obviously is into technology, but I'm a psychologist by background. So a lot of what I do is to look at the effect of technology on behaviours and what trends we're seeing really emerging in the shorter term, maybe anywhere from 3 weeks to maybe 5 years out.
How long have you been with BT?
I have been with BT for 22 years. Obviously I joined when I was 6.
Right, and you've been covering or trying to understand the future with BT for that period of time, or have you been doing other stuff? How long time have you been working on trying to predict future trends?
Oh gosh, well I've probably been in this job for about 8 years. Prior to that I did a lot of research. They let me out of the research department for good behaviour, and actually a lot of my work is around trying to get a lot of the research and innovation in front of customers. Our approach to innovation is not around let's invent stuff, it's actually let's work with customers to apply innovation to change the way that they do business, and that's a combination of technology and people.
I guess that being in this world with technology and telecom for so long time, do you think that the pace of change nowadays is more rapid? Do we see bigger changes in behaviors or companies' way of working today than we did maybe 5 years ago?
I'll always say that technology is changing really fast, and actually technology futurologists have a much tougher job than I do, because actually human behaviours remain relatively constant. Now, we do the same things, but we're doing them in different ways. And I think the other thing, so customers are changing really fast because we're adopting technologies and we're really, harnessing the power of things like the internet in the back of our pocket. Companies, however, are built to last rather than to change. So we do have kind of this inertia, I guess, in companies around how on earth could we restructure to really move in customer time rather than corporate time.
Right, and you mentioned that humans aren't changing that quickly, but societies might be changing. Don't you think that the role for sort of nations or for companies as well in this new world of technology is slightly different when it was a couple of years back?
Yes and no. I think largely there is an opportunity to be very different, but actually when you look at companies, they typically take very traditional structures. It's very difficult to break culture. Culture doesn't change overnight. I always compare it to continental drift. It sort of changes, but it's quite slow, whereas you've got the technology changing really fast, and actually individual adoption of that technology being quite fast as well, but culture is quite slow to change.
One of the things you mentioned in your speak here was around social and how Twitter and Facebook is changing the communication around your brand. How big story is that for a company, or is that, I mean, that discussion has been around on coffee tables all over for many years now. Is this a big change?
Well, I actually did a session at a conference called Social Business the other month, and I said, well, I assume you want me to talk about social media, because in my book, business has always been social. I think that the opportunity for social media is it's a different way of communicating very openly. It's infinitely mineable, so you can actually see what's going on. You can see those conversations. You never saw them before. They were probably going on. But the other thing is it opens things up. So you have the ability to innovate with customers, and customers are incredible at doing stuff like that. We have one guy that does effectively 39 hours a week of free work for us because he likes solving problems. So he'll go on forums and he'll solve problems. So we have an appetite with customers to do that. But equally, you can start to look at how do you embed that into businesses as well. So how do we use social tools that customers are using, that we're using? I'm using customers in the abstract, so we're using that. How do we, when we walk through the door of the office, use the same tools to actually change the way that we do business?
And I guess that is the biggest challenge, I guess, to take care of the conversation through your own or traditional ways of sort of customer care or marketing departments is one thing. The other way is open up your company more in a new way of business. How much of a challenge is that, do you think, for traditional companies that maybe BT is one of the examples of?
I think it is quite difficult because I usually use the analogy that you can't control the dance floor, but you can go and dance. And I think it's the lack of control thing that I think panics people. At social, you can't control, but you can listen to very effectively. So I always say, watch the dance floor, see what kind of dancing is going on, and then when you get brave, step onto the dance floor, start to boogie. That's actually a different paradigm because increasingly, I mean, marketing departments owned the brand. Now, did they really? But actually the brand now really is in the hands of customers, and it's a lot to do with what they're talking about that brand. So I make the point that actually now marketing is service and service is marketing, because actually a lot of the things that customers talk about are the service, things about the service that they're getting. And that's effectively the marketing messages that other customers are seeing.
I guess you can see different differences in how companies and maybe corporate cultures is around the world, where Sweden might have one kind of business climate and the UK is something else. Do you think that we are well off in Europe overall compared to the US, and can you see any difference in Sweden, for example?
We've not done any specific research in Sweden, I must admit. Looking at the research, so we've done a lot in the UK, a lot in the US, and a lot in Asia Pacific. I would say that actually baseline behaviours are not too dissimilar because we're all wired in the same way, but there are huge cultural variations. So if we look like a market like China, for example, they've suddenly got access to this technology. They've never had it before, so they got really excited. So their Twitter equivalent, Weibo, is just lighting up as people are starting to talk to each other. Now that makes the government quite uncomfortable, but in actual fact that's a change that's really happened largely because they've kind of jumped across us in terms of technology. I always say actually in the Western markets, in Europe and the US, and indeed Australia, we're sometimes a little bit more conservative about adoption of technology because some of it in the past has been quite bad, and it's good now. And as I said, you're looking at China, maybe India as well, some of the real sort of emerging nations, they're adopting this technology and they've never had the bad technology in the start, and they're really starting to harness it.
Talking about good and bad, I guess that we're most in this audience, and maybe you yourself think that most part of this development is very good and it's helping us making business more open, transparent and democratic. What is the backside? Is there any obstacles or things that you think that we should work on trying to reduce the impact on when it comes to new technology?
I think the technology piece is easy, to be honest. The technologies are there, it's how we want to use them, and I think that the challenge for the future is a lot to do. So things are very transparent now. We have Google knowledge. It's very, very hard to hide. So I think in terms of brands, we're seeing this, you need to be open, you need to be honest, you need to be transparent, and that sometimes means that you have to maybe admit uncomfortable truths, and again, you know, that's nothing to do with the technology. It's a challenge that technology has given us, but actually that's a lot of a challenge with business. I always call it business as unusual now, because we are having to challenge some of the things that we've grown up with and we're very comfortable with. We're going out of our comfort zone sometimes.
Thank you very much, Nichola.
It's a pleasure.
Thanks.